Hey everyone, this is Julia with episode number 83 of the Mixology Talk podcast. When I think of the word upsell, I feel like it has a bad connotation. It makes me think of used car dealers and sleaziness and people like just trying to sell you stuff that you just don't want. But behind the bar, upselling is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it can actually be a really good way to improve the guest experience. It gives you a chance to improve your tips. It also gives you a chance to support the bar's bottom line, which is not a bad thing either. So today we're going to talk a little bit about upselling the right way, aka the way that supports a great guest experience, but also helps line your pocket as well. So I thought it would be beneficial to start this episode by figuring out what upselling actually means. So I Googled it. And according to Wikipedia, which everybody knows is the best source of this information.
The all-knowing Wikipedia.
The all-knowing Wikipedia. Upselling is a sales technique whereby a seller induces the customer to purchase more expensive items, upgrades, or other add-ons in attempts to make a more profitable sale.
So this could encompass a lot of things.
It's pretty reasonable. Well, I looked up a couple different definitions, and a few other definitions specifically said that the upsell had to be like a coupon or it had to be a discount, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think this one's pretty close.
Yeah, so I think that as it applies to dining and cocktails and being in this environment, there are a ton of ways that we could do this both really well and really poorly.
I think that's the key here, is that upselling is not necessarily coercing somebody, especially awkwardly, to buy something they don't want. That's the key. Right. I think if they don't want it, stop offering. Don't make it awkward. And secondly, it is definitely not giving somebody something more expensive than what they specifically asked for. That's just kind of messed up.
Yeah, and I know this will apply differently to a lot of different operating environments. Like a nightclub is very different from a fine dining restaurant, which is very different from a craft bar. And I think that a lot of these techniques can be employed in very different ways across all these different business styles. So,
right. But I think that when you think about upselling the right way, the key really is around customer choice.
Right.
And so to go a little bit into bad upselling, let's just start with the bad and then we'll end on the good.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to this.
I like to end on the good. Mm-hmm. So I would say one example of this would be without being asked to go ahead and use a more expensive spirit.
Sure. So like customer walks up to the bar and says, I'd like a vodka tonic, and you automatically pour them Stoli Elite.
Right.
And
which
you
is
ask for
totally
$15 to $18.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Which is totally, wait for it, uncalled for?
Oh, terrible.
Uncalled for? Get it?
Oh, that's bad. Okay. So anyway, that's kind of a bit of a sticker shock. That's a bit of a surprise. That is absolutely a terrible way to upsell because that's not what the customer wanted. There's a much better way to go about that upsell to make it less
Well, the first
terrible.
thing they're going to do when they see the bill is tell everybody about it and never come back.
Right.
So, I mean, you may be upselling today, but it's absolutely not good for the overall guest experience. It makes them have perhaps a memorable, but not a good memorable night.
Right.
And they're not coming back. That's not what you want people thinking of your bar.
And of course, that's an exaggerated example. Go from a $7 well drink or whatever it is to $18. But there are shades within that, right? So going from a well to a call to a top shelf, it all kind of falls into different spectrums.
Exactly. And I would say another example of bad upselling would be any situation where you're making the guest uncomfortable. I've been in situations where I don't know that this was necessarily at the bar, but in a hospitality type environment where I'm offered something, I don't know, extra fries or something, and I say no, and they keep offering. It's like, no, I already said no. And I think that if the guest says no, you're done there. You can offer something else, but don't make it weird.
Yeah, I remember I was actually going through a store the other day, and it's funny, like you go to Home Depot or you go to Best Buy or any of these places, they have these people that go through and ask you, oh, are you a homeowner? And you already know they're selling, right? So I got into a conversation with them. I was at one of these places, and the guy goes, hey, do you have internet at your home? And I'm already, kind of my defense is up. I don't really want to talk to anybody. And he was like, do you have internet at home? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, have you considered Xfinity? And I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested. And then we got into this whole dialogue, and he
made it awkward.
It was super awkward. He made me feel bad about not sitting there talking to a sales pitch when I had something else.
When you're just trying to go buy like paint or something.
Right, exactly. So to your point, don't make them feel awkward because they're going to get a bad taste in their mouth about either you as a bartender, most likely, and also the establishment, and they probably won't come back.
And I think there's a big element of reading the customer. And they read your audience here. If somebody is, for example, waiting for their date, they get one drink and then their date arrives and they're obviously off to somewhere else for dinner or something. Like, don't go haranguing them to order another drink. They're obviously on their way out the door, and that's okay. Let them go. Yeah. If you make it weird, they're not going to come back. I say the final situation that I could think of bad upselling is specific to bars, I think, and that is in a case of over-serving. In general, you absolutely want to give folks an opportunity to order another drink. You know, their drink's getting low, they may want another, not if they're drunk. It is your job to make the call and to not serve folks who are absolutely over intoxicated. And so if they're drunk, it's not time to think about your tips. It's not time to offer them another cocktail. It might be time to offer them some water, perhaps.
Or an Uber ride.
Or an Uber ride, or both.
Right. So let's kind of flip that coin over and kind of concentrate on good upselling techniques. And I'm sure every one of you that have been behind the bar have your own techniques, and we would absolutely love to hear some of your like ninja secret upselling techniques, and you can put that on the website, right?
Absolutely. Mixologytalk.com/83.
Perfect. So the first thing that you can always ask, and first thing to remember, is that good upselling can easily be mistaken for good bartending. They kind of go hand in hand. It's like, my analogy is like, customer walks up to you and they want an old fashioned. And now you can start to ask them very specific questions like, do you want bourbon or rye? You know, how spicy do you like your ryes, or, you know, whatever. And now you're asking for the upsell and kind of steering them in a very particular way with the customer experience in mind. And
you're also helping them order a drink they're going to like more.
Right. Absolutely. And as all of you know, behind the bar, you know, with all the craft spirits that are coming out right now, from a consumer perspective, it's impossible to know any of these brands. We do because we work with them on it, making a little bit more money for yourselves.
Absolutely. It starts a conversation and it creates a relationship there as opposed to just a transaction.
Right. And this is where you can drop some really cool knowledge about this distillery, you know, any history that you have. This is a way of opening up that dialogue, increasing, you know, the customer awareness, and really sharing the knowledge that you love. And that kind of keeps you in the business. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it, honestly, it doesn't even have to be that complicated. You could just ask if they want a double.
Yeah, it's true. Like, yeah, hey, you want single or double? That's absolutely valid.
Exactly. Which might make more sense if you're not in a craft bar. If you're in your sort of neighborhood bar, then folks may not want to sit down and chat about the distillery for 10 minutes.
Right.
But they might want a double.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who wouldn't? I mean, that sounds awesome.
Exactly. I mean, along those lines, just asking whether they have a preference on their liquor.
Yeah. So, for example, if
like
somebody...
a gin and tonic.
Sure. Absolutely.
I mean, you never order just a gin and tonic.
No, I usually call my gin. I love Tanqueray. I always have. So I'll call for a Tanqueray and tonic. And it kind of rolls off the tongue, you know, TNT. So
it does.
It works out really well. But
if you were to order a gin and tonic and the bartender asks, oh, do you have a gin that you prefer? You would almost always say, oh, yeah.
Absolutely. And on the other side of that, too, this is where you can interject and say, you know what? I really like my Tanqueray and tonics with Hendrix or Tanqueray or Corsair, whatever it is that you're really excited about at the moment. This is the opportunity to share that enthusiasm and try, you know, get them onto a new brand or, you know, share your experience with it. Obviously not forcing it.
Sure.
But providing options and saying this is my preference.
And
Would
again,
you like to try that?
Starting the conversation. If somebody orders a gin and tonic and you come back and say, man, we just got this fantastic new London Dry gin in last week. I think it's really fantastic in this drink. Would you like to try it?
It's funny. This topic actually reminds me of a viral video on Facebook I saw just last week. And it was this almost exact scenario where the guy walks up to the bar and orders a gin and tonic, and the bartender just goes absolutely crazy. Like, here's our list. And he starts to go like,
oh no,
procured list, this, that, and the other. And it just like
ridiculous.
Completely devolves into this like 45-minute experience of just absurdity. And it was so funny. And I'm just like, okay, I can see how
I'll go ahead
like this could happen.
I'll find the link. I'll find the link and put that in the show notes. But I think to your point, though, like, don't go too crazy.
Right,
This doesn't need to be an interrogation.
Right,
you know, read your customer. If they're just thirsty and they just want a drink, Like, there's only so many questions you're going to want to ask.
Right. Keep it simple, clean, and yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. I think there's a balance there for sure. I think another thing that I think is pretty standard operating procedure, in my opinion, in most bars I've seen, is asking someone if they want another drink before they've actually finished the first.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because if you wait till somebody's done, then they're already thinking about where to go next.
Right. And actually, we just did an interview with Eric Castro the other day, and him and I are very much aligned on this. You know, if you're down to that last, depending on the volume of the bar, that third to last 25% of your cocktail, that's the time where you ask, because people are still kind of in the moment. You know, you haven't broken them out of that kind of
the spell.
Exactly. The space. They're still enjoying themselves. You know, they're still in conversation. And that's the time, both as a hospitality professional and just a good bartender, that's when you ask.
Exactly. And they can always say no. And then they may say yes later on after they have finished their drink. And that's completely fine too, but it gives you an opportunity. Yeah,
it's funny. One of my managers that I worked with a long time ago, this was one of his biggest pet peeves when he went out to a restaurant. You know, if he got down to his last quarter glass of wine and the server came up immediately and said, "Hey, would you like another glass of rosé," or whatever he was drinking, he would always say yes. Almost all. I mean, not, forever, but, for the second glass, he would always say yes. But if they came by and he was already empty, he would say no. I was like, that's kind of mean. But,
what if you're thirsty?
I know. What if you really wanted that second glass? But this kind of really kind of drove home the point to us, that we worked with him of, okay, let's just keep that in mind. And as you walk through the dining room or past the customer at the bar, just keep an eye on those levels.
I will say, on a related note, though, don't take my drink away if I'm not done with it.
Oh, absolutely not.
Huge pet peeve. Mm-hmm. Which
you always
happens
ask.
A lot.
Yeah, you always ask, are you done with this? Or may I get you another? That kind of thing. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Even if there's ice, people get crazy about it.
It's true.
Like, there's like a film of booze at the bottom of it. And they're like, no, I'm going to lick the inside of that. What are you doing? Stop.
Can I have a straw, please?
Yeah, exactly. Or a spoon so I can scrape it out of the bottom of the glass.
I'm not quite that bad.
But people get crazy about that. And it's funny, you can always laugh about it. But still, yeah, it's a good opportunity.
Exactly.
For the upsell.
Ask before the drink is empty. And then you're going to give folks an opportunity to buy another drink. And, when people think of upselling, I think they think of like an improved version of what they're already ordering. So I would like a margarita. Oh, I'd like a Patron.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, just increasing the check average is an upsell. If there's a way that you can make a suggestion that your guest will take, you've just upsold.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, for example, let's imagine that your guest has a really nice glass of wine and you happen to know that one of the appetizers on the menu goes phenomenally well with that glass of wine. Then you offer that to them and you say that to them and say, you know what? The tuna tartare just goes fantastically well with what you've just ordered. Would you be interested in that?
Yeah. And it works on both sides of that spectrum too. Like, for example, this was one of my favorite maneuvers behind the bar is when somebody ordered a very specific dish and I knew there was a wine that perfectly paired with that and by the glass and they were about ready for their next drink. I would offer them a sample. Like, hey, do me a favor. I don't know if you're ready for another glass of wine or not yet, but try this Côte de Rhône with that beef tartare. You're going to love it. And 9 times out of 10, they would order a glass of that.
Interesting. I never thought of samples as a way to do it.
It's kind of like the hook. You're kind of like, hey, look. And it's a good way of providing an amazing experience and still doing all these things that we're trying to do with hospitality. But it's getting that perfect glass of wine with that perfect bite.
Right.
And it goes so well together.
And you're starting with the give. I think by giving them that sort of initial taste, it gives them an opportunity to they get to make the choice. Again, don't make it awkward.
Right.
But it gives them the opportunity to try something they wouldn't have otherwise had the chance to try because they wouldn't have known. You're the expert behind the bar and it's your job to help them have that experience.
Yeah, and so one of the other things that I think is a really overlooked part of a beverage program, especially when you go to a really nice restaurant, is the half bottle selection of wines. This is such a valuable piece of any wine program in a restaurant because if you really start to get to know these wines and know what the pairings are, if you have a couple that's sitting at the bar and they want to try a bunch of different things, this is absolutely a fantastic upsell.
It's such a great point. It really is.
So, I mean, you could do this, with every appetizer on the menu, every entree, and just really get to know what food pairs with which half bottle, because then you get the benefit of a bunch of different things. You're not limited to the by the glass menu. And it's a really cool way of having different things throughout your meal. So, for example, if you have a really beautiful Sancerre or half bottle split of champagne, with oysters in the beginning, or a really nice salad, then, that's course number 1. You go to course number 2, you have a small bite or something else. I think we already talked about tartare, Coteron, Chateauneuf-du-Pape, a really beautiful Syrah, Zinfandel, anything like that, a really cool bottle.
Yeah.
And then for the entree, you can do the same thing and kind of marry, bring a lot of their food together and give them the variety of every one of these things.
Yeah, whereas otherwise,
it's so powerful.
If it was just a couple, they can't order a whole bottle of wine and have multiple experiences. They're kind of like, okay, I guess we're having Côte d'Aron tonight.
Right, exactly. And you're kind of limited, and it doesn't really create the same kind of excitement, but this is something else to add to your arsenal. If you have the capability of selling half bottles at your bar or restaurant, this is absolutely an amazing thing, especially for people that are really into food and wine. This is a really great selling tool.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one more suggestion that I have, which has come up quite a bit for us recently, is if you work in a neighborhood bar where you know that most of your clientele is probably driving to your bar, and you notice that one member of a party is not drinking, that is an opportunity.
Yep.
If they order a Coke, or they order, better yet, water,
or an iced tea or whatever,
iced tea, that is an opportunity to give them an experience that they might be bummed they're not having. That person might be the designated driver, and they're not able to enjoy a cocktail, and that might be a bummer for them. And so if you have non-alcoholic cocktails on your menu, all the better. Start with that. Right. Offer that. And I say offer it every time, because they can always say no, but you've given them the opportunity to have, again, an experience that they otherwise thought that they weren't going to get.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a non-alcoholic options on your menu, then put some on your menu.
Well, and this is an area that I think a lot of people have taken advantage of, but still there's a lot of restaurants and bars out there that aren't utilizing some of the production things that, some of the syrups that they're making to their full advantage. Because if you have this really amazing syrup, by all means, that's a non-alcoholic cocktail.
Syrup plus citrus plus soda water.
Right.
You're done.
For the most part, that's pretty much the formula.
Muddle some mint in the bottom.
You make it fancy, make it, bring people in so they can share in this experience. And it's going to be amazing for everybody. And not only that, but one of the things that we continue to touch on and bring up is what it does for you as a bartender for regulars and for your check averages. Let's not kind of lose sight. They both go hand in hand, hospitality, high check averages. We need to make money at the end of the day.
Right.
And we need to do it in a really good hearted way.
Authentic way.
Exactly. And this is a really good thing to be able to provide to somebody, to bring them into the experience, to be able to share a really cool experience with their friends and not feel like they're missing out on the party.
Exactly. Because I think in a lot of these situations, the designated driver does feel left out. And so they're already feeling left behind. And so there's an opportunity there. So
yeah, absolutely. So, and for you guys behind the bar, it gives you all kinds of creative abilities, right? Like, oh man, I got this really cool pumpkin syrup, and I got, whatever it is that you can start to manipulate and have fun with. It gives you a lot of creative license behind the bar that maybe you don't have in other ways.
And it's a challenge. I'll be honest, it's a challenge.
Yep, absolutely.
So hopefully today's episode has given you a little bit of food or drink for thought on ways that you can go ahead and upsell to your customers in a way that's authentic, supports their experience, and might even have them coming back for more. There is nothing wrong with offering another cocktail, with offering a appetizer or a dessert or something that's going to make the guest experience even better. If you have tips of your own for how you upsell at your bar in an authentic way, I would love to hear about it. I definitely appreciate hearing from the community on this sort of thing. Go ahead and leave your thoughts in the comment section at mixologytalk.com/83. Thanks so much, everyone. We'll catch you next week. Cheers. Never miss an episode by subscribing in iTunes or YouTube. And as always, check out the show notes by clicking on the right.